I was walking to work when I found it. I do not even know how I managed to see it, sitting there under the bush. I think the sun must have shined off of it and it reflected into my eye, which caught my attention. I stopped walking and went over to it. I hadn't seen one of these for years. They used to be everywhere and owned by everyone, but like most things, we had moved on to bigger and better versions now. The iPod Nano was just laying there, under the bush, and I don't know how it got there, and I don't know who left it there, and I really don't know why I picked it up and took it with me. I think I took it because it brought back memories of me as a young teenager, getting my first iPod, which allowed me to explore different styles of music and new and exciting songs, other than the ones I always heard repeating on the radio. Once I picked it up, I placed it in my pocket and continued to walk to work. I know that doesn't make me sound very good, taking something that I found on the street. Taking something that didn't belong to me. Well, trust me, I really wish I hadn't. When I got to work, I walked over to my desk and started up my computer, ready for another boring day of filling out spreadsheets and inputting data. I slowly worked away for around an hour before I found myself getting increasingly bored, and so I began thinking of the iPod. I decided to get it out of my pocket and have a quick look through it. I clicked the small button in the center of the click wheel thing that the iPod Nanos have. This is before touch screens, and the small screen suddenly came to life. I noticed that the battery was still full, meaning that it had been charged recently. I began searching through the files that were saved onto the iPod, and trust me, there were a lot. Almost every song you could think of was on here. Old songs, new songs, songs that I had never even heard of or ever listened to were on this iPod. There were even songs that I knew were only released recently, so whoever owned this iPod was still constantly updating it with the latest music. I knew that I should probably hand it in to police or something, so that they can find the original owner, but I thought I could do that after work. I continued scrolling through the songs, but no matter how far I scrolled, I didn't think I would ever get to the bottom of the list. So, I decided to look through the playlists and see what was saved in there. That's when I found it. The playlist entitled "What Happened to Cecilia." As soon as I read it, I stopped and stared at it. It was probably just a coincidence, but my mother's name is Cecilia. I clicked into the playlist, and this is the list of songs that was in the playlist. Cecilia, Simon and Garfunkel. Died, Alice in Chains. Back in 1999, Kinky. The Cause of Death, Immortal Technique. Bullet in the Head, Rage Against the Machine. Now, for most people, this may seem like a random bunch of songs. Some of you might think it's a short playlist, so I guess that's a bit weird, but that's not what I noticed. As soon as I finished reading the song list, I began to panic. How did the iPod know? Who would make this playlist, and then, me of all people, would find it? My mother's name was Cecilia, and in 1999, she was waiting in line at the bank when a masked man came in and tried to rob the place. Unfortunately, the robbery went wrong, and 3 people were killed. One of those people was my mom. She was shot in the head and killed. I sat at my desk, staring at the small iPod screen, slightly shaking. The memories of my mother came flooding back, but also fear began to flood through me too. Whoever owned this iPod must have wanted me to find it. Maybe it was some sort of sick joke. "Oi, I don't pay you to sit around on your phone," a voice suddenly calls put to me. I look up from the iPod screen and see Ben, my manager, walking over to me. "Come on, mate, probably time to get back to work, isn't it?" he says to me, before pointing at the iPod. "Hey, I haven't seen one of those for a while." "It's an old iPod, isn't it?" he asks me. I reply that it is and briefly explain how it came to be in my possession. We chat for a short while about it before he says, "Very strange that it was just sitting there, but now is probably best to put it away and get on with your work." Ben then leaves as I place the iPod back into my pocket. Ben is a decent manager. He is kind but also strict when he needs to be. He has most coworkers' respect, mine included. Once he has left and gone back into his office, I begin to work on my spreadsheet again, and I continue this up until lunchtime, when I am tempted to look at the iPod once more. I pull it out of my pocket and a message is now on the screen that reads, "New playlist added." I am now very confused because I haven't added any new playlist and I was the only one to touch the iPod since I had found it that morning. I quickly scroll down to Playlists and click into it. The first thing I see is a new playlist and it is entitled Ben. I click into it and read the songs that are in the playlist, and this is what I found. Ben, Michael Jackson. Will, Joyner Lucas. Die Very Rough, Mario Judah. Tomorrow Night, Elvis Presley. I am now very confused and worried. How did the iPod add this new playlist? And why is it saying that Ben will die tomorrow night? I began to panic, and so I decided to ring my girlfriend, Jennifer, to explain what I had found. She always knows the right things to say to me to make me feel better, and so I knew that she would be able to help. "Hello babe, how's work going?" she asked when she answered the phone. I quickly explained the events of that day and asked her what she thought the playlist about my mom meant and what she thought the new playlist about Ben also meant. She thought that it was just someone playing a very bad joke on me and that they probably had remote access that allowed them to upload the new playlist without actually having to touch the iPod. "You're probably right, it's just someone's idea of a joke," I replied to her, but deep down I didn't really believe it. The rest of the day went by without any further incident and I finished work at my usual time. I walked past Ben's office and thought about going in and telling him about the mysterious playlist, but I thought better of it and so walked past his office, like every other day. For the rest of the night, I tried to distract myself from the day's events, and so I spent most of the night in front of the television. I managed to go to sleep at around midnight and I slept until my alarm woke me up for work the next morning. I purposefully left the iPod at home, not wanting it to cause me any more stress while I was at work. I arrived at work and tried to distract myself by just doing my work and trying not to think about the playlist I had found. I looked across the office and saw Ben in his office. He looked exactly like he did every other day, in his suit and tie, working hard. Nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary. He can't die tonight, I thought. I'm sure Jennifer is right, and it is someone I know just playing a prank on me. Maybe it is even Ben himself doing it. At the end of the day, I once again considered mentioning something to Ben, but once again I decided no to. I did, however, poke my head into his office and said, "Have a nice night tonight, Ben." He responded by looking up from his computer and giving a smile and a small nod. I left the office and headed back home, and once I arrived home, I checked the iPod. Nothing. The screen had no new messages, and I had a search, but I couldn't see that anything new had been added. I put it down once more and put on the television and began to watch. I spent the night just watching whatever I found tolerable on TV. I watched some old sitcoms, before watching some police detective show. It was halfway through an episode when a breaking news story suddenly interrupted the broadcast. "Good evening," the newsreader said. "Tonight we bring the terrible news of a 5-car collision on the Crest Highway. 2 cars collided head-on, with another 3 cars then crashing into them. Unfortunately, 4 people were declared dead when the police arrived on the scene, with another man trapped inside his burning vehicle. Police tried tirelessly to free him, but unfortunately after 10 minutes inside the burning car, he also succumbed to his injuries. We will bring you more information as we get it." The newsreader stopped speaking and 5 photos flashed up on screen. As soon as I saw one of the photos, I gasped. I recognized the middle-aged man in the photograph instantly. It was Ben. He was one of the deceased, and somehow I just knew that he would have been the one trapped in the burning car. I just knew it. Suddenly, I heard a small ding coming from the iPod that I had placed down. I picked it up and it read, "New playlist added." I was too scared to look at what this could be. It had already known about my mother's death, and now it had predicted another. I really didn't want to know what this new playlist was, but I just had to know. I slowly scrolled down the word "playlists" and clicked into it and saw the playlist title, "The Police." The display picture for the playlist was also of the band The Police. I began to panic less now. This seemed like a more normal playlist than the two I had already found. I clicked into it and read down the list. My heart started to race faster and faster as I read the list of songs. The playlist title and the songs are as follows. The Police. Will, Joyner Lucas. Discover, Chris Brown. Jennifer's Body, Hole. Tomorrow Morning, Jack Johnson. N.U., Dean. Will, Joyner Lucas. Take the Blame, Motorhead. I am writing all this at 3 in the morning. I have only discovered this playlist tonight, so I do not know what will happen in the morning. I hope that whatever does happen, someone will read this and believe me that I had nothing to do with any death. I don't know anything about them. Only the iPod knows.